it's my Chua and welcome back to my channel. I've seen this all over YouTube and I decided I wanted to be a part of this trend. So today I'm filming my mid-year book freakout tag, which I will be answering a list of questions about the books I've read from the beginning of the year until now. So I'm going to try and answer each question with a different book, and the questions may or may not have more than one answer because I wanted to give more of a variety for each one of them. So I do have my questions here, and so I apologize in advance if I'm not maintaining eye contact throughout the whole video, but just know that I'm looking at my notes here. So just giving some stats, I believe I read a total of 72 books so far this year. And so yeah, I think that's all for the stats. So the first question I have is, what's the best book you've read this year? And I chose Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. And so this book follows Cora and Dean is actually Cora's sister's fiance. And so at the beginning of this book, we find out that they actually can't stand each other, and so they've been teasing each other, pulling pranks on each other. They have this tension of not really liking each other. On the night of Mandy's birthday celebration, everybody's at the bar, and Mandy is actually Cora's older sister, so Dean's fiance, right? And so when everybody decides to leave, Cora decides to stay back for a few more drinks. But when she tries to go home, she notices that somebody stole her wallet, so she can't really catch a ride home. So Cora ends up relying on Dean to pick her up, even though she doesn't want to, but nobody else is picking up her calls. On their way home, they actually get attacked and then kidnapped together by the man that was actually harassing Cora at the bars. And so this is a darker romance. I would suggest that you check the trigger warnings for this because they do get, tied up in the basement and are forced to do things that they're not willing to do. And so this was, I don't know, probably the darkest one I've read so far. I am starting to dip my toes into darker romances, right? But there are things that do trigger me that I think about a lot, like before I go to sleep. I would say that this is one of the best books I've read this year so far. And so I'm intrigued. I want to read the author's backlist, and I'm still kind of scared, still kind of afraid to explore that area of romance. The next question is, what is the best sequel you've read this year? And I had to look up the definition of sequel because I was kind of getting it confused with series, right? And so sequel, it would be kind of more like, there's a second book that continues from the first book. Well, that's how I kind of took it as. So I read a few sequels this year. I read the Grid Trilogy, Inheritance Games. I read The Selection, but the Mindfuck series definitely takes the cake for this pick. So this is a recent read and I've talked about it before. I haven't fully finished the series yet, but I am on like book 3 of the series, and so I'm enjoying it so far. Just from the first book, I was really invested in this series. So this follows Lana, who we know is a serial killer, right? And then it follows Logan, who is our main male lead, and he's actually the profiler on Lana's murder case. Obviously, there is some secrecy and like tension involved because they do start dating each other and eventually falling in love. And so I can't get enough of this series. This is definitely one of the tops. The next question I have is, what is a new release you haven't read but want to? And right off the charts, I 100% want to read Twisted Lives by Anna Huang. And this book is the 4th, I believe, and the last book to the Twisted series. So I've read the first book, which is Twisted Love, and then the second book, which is Twisted Games, and so I haven't read the third book yet. I try to space out the books I'm reading in the series, right? Because if I read them back to back, I kind of find that they get repetitive sometimes, and so it's by the same author, so that's kind of bound to happen. But anyways, this is one of my highly anticipated reads. Another book that I wanted to read and I've seen going around quite a bit is called My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey, and so I did read It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and I know a lot of people love that book, but it wasn't really there for me, and maybe it's because I listened to it on audio, but I do want to go back and read some of the author's backlist also. So with My Killer Vacation, I don't know too much about it, but I've heard that it's about our main lead and her brother going to this vacation home, I believe, and they find a corpse there, right? And so I think it's a romance between the main lead and then detective. I'm not sure. I don't like to know a lot about each book that I'm going to read because I like going in blindly and I hate spoilers, and so I just know a little bit enough to be intrigued, but I don't know like the full details about it. So the next question is, what is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year? I feel like this book is everybody's most anticipated read, and it's called It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. And so the first book is It Ends With Us, and I read that last year. I feel like that book just blew up. And if I'm going to be honest, I actually DNF'd this book like at the 50th percent mark, and I just couldn't get past that until I've seen that a lot of people talked about it, and now I was just like, okay, fine, I'll go back and finish reading it. And I'm so glad I did. It was such an emotional read. But anyways, It Starts With Us, and I believe that's a continuation of where It Ends With Us left off. I've heard some people say that they are afraid to read it because they actually really liked how book 1 ended. But for me, I'm like, I wanted more. Like, I just wanted to know what happened even after the epilogue. So I'm very happy that the author decided to do a book 2. So the next question I have is, what is the biggest surprise? And so I believe that we all go in reading a book expecting to like it, right? We wouldn't, just randomly pick up a book that you didn't think you would like. So I wouldn't say that I was completely surprised, but this one book did blow my mind, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And it was The Takeover by T.L. Swan. I love this book to the core. Like, all of the aspects in this was just phenomenal. And I think what really got me was that the male character had to slowly win over the female character's children, right? And I believe, like, in most of the books that I've read with children involved, the children are usually like, younger, so it wasn't as hard to win them over. But in this case, we are dealing with teenage boys, right? And they obviously made it hard for the male character to be part of their lives. I think it's just the fact that he had to create a bond with each one of the children kind of got me, and I just really love how this book wrapped up. It was really emotional at times, but I just enjoyed everything about this book. So on the flip side, I have what is the biggest disappointment? And I've talked about this so much. I even made a whole reveal about it, and so it's gotta be Every Summer After by Carly Fortune for me as the biggest disappointment. And I hate to put this book out there and say that it was disgraceful or whatever, because I've seen like a lot of people actually really love this book, and this was actually one of the best books other people have read. But out of all of the disappointing books I read, I just feel like this is the one that I have the most strong feelings about, and so that's why I felt like it fit in this category for me. I want to say the fact that other people really hyped up this book made me have higher expectations for it, and so when it crashed, I feel like it just crashed extra hard for me because I just was so disappointed. Okay, so I decided to throw in another book for this category of disappointment. This next book is You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao, and I feel like this book could have been good depending on the time that I've read it. Like, if I started reading this book at the start of my book journey, then maybe I might have liked it a little bit more. But because I'm more experienced with my books and I have a more critical review of other books, then I feel like it just didn't live up to par. It didn't really hit home for me. It wasn't as sad or emotional as other people have said it was. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those books that I'm like, why did I even waste my time reading? I will never think about this book again unless I want to rant about it. So, yeah. The next question is favorite new author, and I picked 2 for this. And so the first one would be T.L. Swan, and I've only read 2 of her books, but I'm really vibing with her humor. Like, I love the way she writes banter. I love the way she writes her characters. It makes her characters feel charming and very unique. The next author is Daphne Perry, and I've also only read 2 books from her, but I'm really liking how her stories flow. Like, I feel like they are really easy to read, and she has other books that I'm really intrigued by, and so Daphne Perry is definitely one of my favorite new authors. The next question is, who is your newest fictional crush? And I don't know, I picked gentle, caring men over brooding, like, sexy men any day, right? So for this one, I picked Logan, right? And that's not a surprise. He's from the Mindfuck series that I talked about earlier. And I feel like he was just such a gentleman, and he was, really caring towards Lana, and he respected her so much in the ways that even she didn't want to tell him things, he never pushed her to do so. But like I said, I'm only 2 books in, and so I don't know how it's gonna end up, but I'm loving him so far as a character. I can't guarantee that my mind won't change, but I'm hoping he stays as this gentleman that he is, and can't wait to see how the story unfolds. Another fictional crush is Cole from The Birthday List, and I just loved how patient his character was, right? Not only was he courting Poppy, but he was helping her with her feelings and helping her grieve over her late husband. And so I just feel like he was really, really patient with her. I love that he was always there for Poppy whenever she needed him, and he never got irritated by her feelings or anything like that. Or maybe I just like men in the law enforcement industry. I don't know. The next question is, who is the newest favorite character? And so the last question was kind of geared towards the men in the story, and so this question I'm going to use towards the woman. So obviously the default character is Lana, right? And she is just such a badass, and she is this anti-heroine and is out to catch all of the bad guys. So obviously I don't condone this in real life, but in this book, like, I was rooting for her the whole way. She kills people without thinking and makes sure she's left her mark, right? And so I don't know, I don't think anybody can really top Lana in this case. But another character that I do really admire is Lotus from Hookshot. And Hookshot is written by Kennedy Ryan, and it is the third book of the Hoops series. And so she is not as brutal as Lana, but she is really strong. I feel like she stands up for herself and she doesn't let nobody push her around. I also love the way that she is just so straight up. Like, I want to say she is that kinky friend that we always see as side characters from any other book, right? She just straight up says that she enjoys having sex, she loves it, and she's proud of it, and so I admire this part of her. Okay, so the next question we have is a book that made you cry. And I cry a lot in real life. I'm such a crybaby, and my husband can attest to this, but surprisingly I have not really cried over books. Like, there are times that I got emotional and heartbroken, but I've never really sobbingly cried. So I have a few books that I thought were really emotional and may have made me teary-eyed, but not really, or not necessarily sobbing, right? And so the first one was Hookshot by Kennedy Ryan that I was talking about earlier. And there was this scene in here that just broke me. Like, I got goosebumps when this scene came on, and I was just like, I don't know, like, I was just so emotional at that time. Another good one is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I just remember there being like heart-wrenching quotes in this book that I still think about. Like, it was just so good, and I don't know, at that moment I just really wanted to cry for this character. Okay, so there are some honorable mentions that I wanted to put out there. The Takeover, there was actually, a few emotional scenes in this. Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This one was emotional in the sense of I could relate as a mother. There was Long Shot, which is the first book of the Hoop series, and this one was hard to read but really worth the read as well because of everything that happened in that book. And then I have Daisy Jones and the Six, and I really loved how the narrators portray the emotions in this book. This book I don't think I rated too highly on my scale of plot wise and like just overall, but I do remember it was an emotional book, and I really caught some good quotes in this one as well. So now on the flip side, what is a book that made you happy? And so I think that if a book is beautifully written and everything wraps up well, it's really satisfying and really heartwarming, and obviously I would be happy, right? But for this case, I picked a book that I was just smiling throughout the whole time. So for this question, I chose The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams, and this book was just really lighthearted, really funny, really quirky, really cheesy, and I just thought it fit well with this question. There weren't many like serious plots to this book, and so I feel like it was just a cute, really happy romance. Okay, so next is the most beautiful book you've bought this year or was gifted this year. And I've only bought 2 books in my entire life if we're talking about books and not like textbooks. And so one I bought last year, so I guess this one is a default for this question, and it is Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I hope that it is not flipped the other way, but it's Addicted to You. And so yeah, I don't know, this is the default book, and I don't usually buy a lot of books or I barely even buy books in general, because I am those type that I like to read the book and make sure I like it before I actually buy it. I know it sounds kind of weird, but that's just how I am, and I like to spend my money wisely. And so yeah, this is the prettiest book I've bought this year. And if you want to, I've attached my wish list in the description box below if you want to check it out. So the last question I have for this video: what book do you need to read by the end of the year? I have the Mindfuck series that I need to finish, and then the Addicted / Calloway Sister series, and this I actually haven't started yet, but I definitely want to start, hop on the trend, see what it's all about, and so that's one of my goals. I also want to start the Salacious Players Club series. I believe that only has 3 books, maybe 4, but I do want to start that one. A lot of people have said really good things about it, and so those will be all of the books that I want to read for this year. Alright guys, well that is all for me. I hope that I wasn't rambling too much, but these are just some of my simple thoughts on this. If you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.